Investigative hearing. Minister of Information says Twitter remains suspended. House takes steps to tackle loopholes in media regulation. And House canvasses improved security at Nigeria's correctional facilities. It's a pleasure to have you join us again on You and Your Reps. My name is Victor Azu. Welcome. Now, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says the operations of Twitter in Nigeria remains suspended until it registers with and obtains a license from relevant agencies. The minister, during an investigative hearing at the House of Representatives, explains that the suspension of Twitter is because it has become a national security risk by promoting disunity. National Assembly correspondent Lamia Ali reports.
Made their platform available for separatist groups and people calling for the dismemberment of Nigeria.
Citing several instances to the House Joint Committee investigating the indefinite suspension of the microblogging and social networking site Twitter, in which it became a platform of choice for people and groups promoting activities to destabilize Nigeria, the minister says it's left government with no choice than to suspend its operations. This decision, he adds, is in conformity with local and international laws and conventions on cybersecurity.
To preserve the internal security of Nigerians, it's very instructive that anybody, any platform that threatens the internal security of Nigeria would not be allowed to operate.
He stresses the stance of government not to allow multinationals to trample on Nigeria's sovereignty.
Who is Twitter? Are they a platform, content creator, or are they the judge? We're talking about a sovereign country. Nigeria will not be ruled by the laws of a multinational, no matter how powerful it is.
The Joint Investigative Committee, headed by the Chairman House Committee on Information, Segun Udibumi, was mandated to gather facts on the indefinite suspension of Twitter operations.
The essence of this hearing is to make Nigeria acquainted with reasons for government actions and the subject matter.
I want to appeal to the Honourable Minister that we should go into a negotiation with Twitter to see how this issue can be amicably resolved.
Nigeria first. Let's be honest to ourselves and let's call a spade a spade.
A federal government committee is now in place to engage Twitter sequel to its request for dialogue.
Loopholes in the regulation of media, advertising and intellectual property have affected operations and activities in these industries. Now, the Speaker, House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, at a public hearing convened by the House Committee on Information, said amendments of statutory laws in this regard are in the best interest of Nigerians.
Gathered here before the House of Representatives Committee on Information, National Orientation, Ethics and Values are policymakers, regulators and practitioners in the information industry to make inputs on 5 draft bills being considered for review. The Speaker, House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila, who was represented at the opening of the public hearing, said this process will engender quality legislation that is fair and acceptable in tune with international best practice.
If these bills become law, the proposals contained therein will influence the creation of media content. They will determine the content of advertising, guarantee free speech, and establish institutions that will impact our country for generations to come.
The Chairman House Committee on Information, Segun Udibumi, stated that the forum allows for sharing of perspectives to meet the yearnings of citizens.
Democracy is about the people, and the law are made for the people. The program is structured to collectively analyze the provisions of
of the bill.
The 5 bills being considered for amendments are the National Broadcasting Commission Act, the Advertising Practitioners Act, the National Film and Video Censors Board Act, the Nigeria Press Council Act, and a bill to establish Nigerian Institute of Translators and Interpreters.
And the Correctional Service is scaling up security across the 244 custodial centers in Nigeria to protect inmates and infrastructure. During an engagement with the House of Representatives Committee on Reformatory Institutions, the need to reduce overcrowding was also among issues of priority discussed.
We are making efforts to acquire more arms and ammunition so as to protect our facilities, and this is a task that we must do.
Both the committee and management of the service during this oversight to the headquarters of the Nigeria Correctional Service in Abuja were of the view that, considering increased attacks on custodial centers, it has become necessary to take urgent preventive steps. The engagement provided opportunity to look at other challenges of the service vis-a-vis its performance viewed from the budgetary releases.
Most custodial centers are caught up by immunization, which does not give room for expansion and always prompt the external attack.
The non-custodial service is a major priority of the committee in the 2022 budget consideration, given its significance as provided in the Correctional Act 2019.
Members of the committee went round for an assessment of projects cited within the headquarters of the complex.
Implementing the legislation that prohibits discrimination against persons with disabilities is the joint responsibility of all. Stakeholders made this submission as the House Committee on Disabilities investigated alleged violation of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act by Dana Airline.
The House of Representatives investigated alleged violation of Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act involving Dana Airline and a passenger.
Whatever presentation or submissions you may make here today will be taken into account and reflected in our recommendations.
He was told Dana Air does not fly persons with disabilities at night. I didn't book night flights. He responded, you rescheduled this flight. The woman on duty insisted that it is their policy.
We want to tell the airlines that are here that enough is enough. We try everything possible to address it through the administrative way, but once it gets out of hand, we, the National Commission, are ready to take any airline to court.
We never discriminate against any of you. We feel your pain. And we don't call you disabled, we call you reduced mobility.
The matter had come up on the floor of the House on 19th May, year 2021, and referred to the committee for investigation.
Now, voting methods in legislative parlance broadly refer to how decisions are arrived at. In Nigeria's House of Representatives, what methods are there and how are they deployed? Let's find out.
The House can reach an agreement on an issue in two ways. Either the House is the Speaker will now call those who agree, say aye. Those who are opposed say nay, nay. Then based on how loud the voice is, then the House now may decide to gavel and give the vote to either the nays or the ayes. Okay? Now, there are also occasions where the rules demand specifically that the House must be divided, and everybody will answer his name. For example, in suspending a rule, when the House is suspending a rule, our procedure, our standing rules provide that the House must be divided, in which case you count. The votes will be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then the vote will be divided into two. Those who are against, those who are against, and then we divide the House. Physical counting. And then there are occasions also where we can vote electronically. All seats, the seat of each member is provided with an electronic voting device. Then you have a card which you will slot. Immediately you slot, then some time will be given. Time will be given. Speaker will you can now vote 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The speaker will declare that you can vote. Whichever there are buttons, there is a button for aye, there is a button for nay, there is also a button for abstention. Whichever way you want to vote, you just press the button and it will show on the screen. So we have about 3 ways of voting: voice vote, dividing the House, and then electronic voting.
And the spokesman of the House of Representatives, Benjamin Kalu, has been speaking on the achievements of the 9th House of Representatives in the last 2 years. You and your reps also engaged him on plans for the next 2 years.
Issues bordering on sustainable power, health, agriculture, food security, and a whole lot. And also insecurity in the country, human capital development, they were put on the front burner. They were made a priority on our scale of preference. But one that was very dear to our heart was to introduce budget reform, national budget reform. Because everything, it was dependent or is dependent on national budget, both for the public sector and the private sector. To have a predictable financial year, to be able to make the necessary projection for the year, economic projection, the nation needed a budget to be in place early enough. The private sector needed the budget to be in place early enough. And the Constitution had a provision to ensure that a calendar of the budget was not what was being practiced. Constitutional provision was for it to run from January to December. But our budget had been in illegality. So this House insisted we must put it in place. And the benefit of having an early budget cannot be overemphasized. So we tried, many never believed that it would be done. We taxed ourselves to put it in place. And the second year, people thought it was going to be a one-off thing, but we have done it back to back. So gradually, it is becoming what I call a tradition. It's no longer a one-off because it's been sustainable. And we have put structure in place to ensure that, it goes from one year to the other, even when we are finished We're done with this tenor. So that has helped the executive to, tailor their policies against timelines. And that has also helped the private sector to tailor their projections against timeline. It will interest you to know that we have pushed about 730 motions, between the first year and the second year, and 98 of those motions, they were dedicated to security-related issues. We also mounted pressure that we needed a new energy to be injected in the security leadership architecture of the country. And though we believe it was not going to be El Dorado, but yet it will introduce new innovation, it will introduce new way of doing things, new strategy, and after much push, the service chiefs were replaced. So we did not stop there. We're still pushing within security, and that informed our recently coming up with what we call the Security Summit. This has not happened in other, assemblies, where we'll bring all the stakeholders to come and sit down and say, how are we going to get this thing solved? Because you see, before now, we did not just sit here at the National Assembly. We went to observe the impact of this insecurity. The leadership of the House traveled as far as Katsina, as far as Borno, and other affected hotspots like Zamfara State to get first-hand information. So that motivated us the more to once in a while invite the service chiefs to engage with them, the NSA, the IG of police, DSS head, and all the rest of them. But that wasn't enough for us, so we had to call for this special security summit, which now afforded us an opportunity to bring faith-based organization leaders, traditional organization leaders, traditional rulers, and civil society organizations for us to discuss how do we get this thing, better than what it is now. What is it that we are doing wrong? And this took place on it was on May 26th to about 29th, 2021. We had that interaction, and strong recommendations were harvested from that engagement. And based on that interaction, we've been able to come up with, on the, I think it was 9th of June, we came out with about 9 new security bills, to be able to address some of these issues. And those bills, they're as follows: the Armed Forces Act Amendment Bill, you have also the Police Act Amendment Bill, you have the National Security and Civil Defense Corps Act of 2003 Amendment Bill 2021, you have the National Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps Act 2007 Amendment Bill. We also touched the Economic and Financial Crime Commission Act Amendment Bill. We touch also the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission Act, Amendment Bill 2021. We also touch Custom and Excise Amendment Act, and also looked at a very important piece of legislation from ECOWAS, which is known as the ECOWAS Convention on Small Arms, Light Weapons, and Ammunition Rectification and Enforcement Bill 2021. Also the National Security Agencies Act Amendment Bill 2021. All these things we looked at to be able to introduce a new set of reforms, now help the security of lives and properties in the country to be better than it is. We have also introduced a lot of reforms in the police. We push, and pass the Revised Police Act 2020 and Police Service Commission Reform Bill 2020. It's part of what we put on the legislative agenda. We said the PIB, which is over a decade old, running in and out of the parliament, we should body the commitment, the body language of the leaders of the parliament, both the Senate and the House, is that we want to get this thing passed because of the energy transition, that we are moving from fossil fuel to other alternative sources of energy, and we need to be very competitive, before the eyes of the IOCs, who have other platforms and other opportunities. So we must structure our law to be able to make it a win-win situation, both for us as the host country and for those who are coming to bring in the money to do the business here, since we cannot really fund it. Though we've been limited by COVID, which you also know that we played a major role during the COVID period, we donated our salaries, which has never happened in the history of parliamentary practice around the world. We donated 2 months' salaries, and we did not stop there. We also went home to engage with our constituents. We ran orientation programs to sensitize the people. We trained health workers. We provided palliatives. We provided food to make sure that we help our communities with this pandemic. So as representative, our function was not just to make laws and do oversight function. The representative function was much showcased when we had the pandemic, and though it restricted our number of sitting because of the protocol of WHO on COVID, but suffice that to say that we worked outside the chambers and pushed for the interests of Nigeria and those things we believe that will add value. The thorny issue has always been on how to handle the host community issues, and also the frontier, states and all that. So we are trying to resolve that, and after that we push. Nigerians should also know that we are committed to the electoral reforms, and that is why we have gone the whole 9 years of making sure that the Electoral Act, gets to the final stage, and it is at the final stage. I know so many people are worried what is holding it. Is it going to be like the former one when it will come to the president late, and because of the coming election it will not be passed? No, we are committed to push it out before the we'll go on our vacation. So it is important also to note, for Nigerians to know, that we have in these 2 years handled about 163 public petitions, through the Public Petition Committee, and to address some of the things that could not be addressed in court, that people don't want to go to court to handle. They bring it to us, and we entertain that through our committee known as the Public Petition Committee.
Nigerians have also weighed in on performance of the 9th House of Representatives in the last 2 years and what they would like to see going forward. Take a listen.
They are trying, but they need to try harder, because what is expected of them, we are not seeing what we need from them, because the area of insecurity is what bothers us a lot.
I'll give them pass mark, because they were able to pass so many bills to the executive. They should look into security and the economy of this nation, because the security aspect of this country is really biting on us. We need to do something about this, about the security issue.
They should look more into the insecurity in the country at the moment. They should also look at things of economic importance.
It's not that they are not making laws, but the laws they are making are not the actual laws expected of them from the people they are representing. They should go back to their homes, those who represented them, and ask them what they want. So that when they come back, they will be representing the people who took them there effectively.
So far, there has been harmonious relationship between the executive and the representatives compared to the 8th Assembly. So there has been, as a result of that, there has been smooth running in legislations and passage of bills. If they come back, I really wish they will focus on how Nigeria's economy can improve.
There should be a bill that actually guarantees that this social security is paid. It should be a law, not something they do as charity every now and then there's an issue.
And you and your reps will be hoping that the House can marry their plans with the desires of ordinary Nigerians going forward. And this is where we leave it on you and your reps for the week. Thank you for your company. My name is Victor Azu. Be sure to join us again.